Welcome to the Cottack Workshop. Today's video, we have been out and about doing some restoration work, and in exchange for that work we were trading this box, and inside we've got a number 5.5 Stanley Plane, a Bailey, looks like a number 4 plane, a marking gauge, and a chisel, and the box itself. Okay, so let's start with the smallest first. This is a chisel. It's got a wooden handle. I can't see the markings yet, and I can't see a brand. So we're going to clean that up and sharpen it and hopefully see where it's from. But I suspect England, Sheffield, and that should be quite a nice chisel. Not super old, it's got quite a modern turned handle on it. This is interesting. This is a marking gauge used with this pin to mark the edge or the line that you want to cut on a piece of wood, a fixed distance. But unlike a lot of marking gauges, it doesn't have a screw to tighten it. What it has is this cam lock, so that it's loose at the moment, but when you twist it, it tightens and then it won't move. And a little bit of research into that. On April the 21st, 1868, the United States Patent Office issued patent number 76884 to Wessel Brodhead for an improvement to the field of carpenter's marking gauges. Brodhead developed a tool that used a simple, elegant method for securing the bar to the head or fence of a marking gauge. Instead of the more common thumbscrew or wedge systems, this gauge took advantage of a cam-shaped bar that need only a slight twist to lock itself to the fence. So, I think this isn't from the 1800s, but the design is, and I think this was made by the person that made the box as a example piece, and it is stamped in a number of places with what I think is the person's name, but again we'll clean that up and hopefully get a little bit more detail on that. Then we have these hand planes. This is a number 5.5, which is good because I don't have one this size, and it's a Bailey and made in England. And there is a very useful way of finding out how old these are. So I'm going to go to the website. How to identify Stanley hand plane age and tool, a type study tool. So the first question is, how many patent or patent dates do you see behind the Stanley hand plane frog? Yeah, that's in here. On this particular one I see none. Do you see a raised ring surrounding the receiver screw at the front? Yes, I do. Is the plane bed painted dark blue? No, it is not. Do you see a raised rib on the toe at the front and the heel at the rear? Yes, I do. Is Stanley imprinted vertically on the adjustment lever? And the answer is yes, it is vertically. That makes this a Stanley Bailey Type 19, which means it was made somewhere between 1948 and 1961. So not super old, but still a good, what's that, 80 years old. And let's have a look at prices on eBay. $59, $27, $47, $41. So that sort of price. So we're going to clean this up and restore it and actually use it as a working hand plane. Now then, this one. We start the flowchart over again. How many patent dates or patent dates do you see behind the Stanley hand plane frog? And I'll show you that later on in a lot of detail, but we're looking right in here. And the answer is 3, which I know means it's going to be older. Do you see a small 1 inch or a large 1.25 inch depth adjustment nut? So that's this here. That is a small one, it's 1 inch across. This is a Stanley Type 11 Stanley Bailey hand plane from 1910 to 1918. So this is over 100 years old, it could be 110 years old, and dates to the time of the First World War. So this is a much older plane. See Stanley Bailey Type 11 hand plane prices on eBay. $225, $66, $97, $120. So this plane is worth about 3 times what this plane is worth, obviously depending on condition and again on age. So I already have, this is I think a number 4. I already have a number 4. But obviously this is a lot newer, but I'm going to restore this one, and you can see some of the differences in the design every time Stanley changed every 5-10 years, which hence the number. However, I'm really excited because this is literally an antique. So that'll be restored and will sit alongside this one as a working hand plane. So the first thing we're going to work on is this chisel, and I'm going to clean off the rust. We're going to sand it down, see if it's flat, and then sharpen it. So what we have here is a piece of tile, like granite or marble, but super flat, and then a piece of 400 grit sandpaper. I'm just going to wet that. What I'm doing is cleaning off the back of the chisel. I'm doing this for a couple of reasons. One is to remove the rust, but the other is to see if the back is indeed flat, because that's what you reference off when you're using it. So already starting to see. What I'm looking at is where the shine comes first, because they're obviously the high spots, and that tells you a little bit about the quality of the chisel. So high on either side, low in the middle, so it's this sort of curve. What I want to do is get it so that there's completely shiny along this edge here. So that's what I'm working on now. So there's still a low spot here, and starting to be able to see what is stamped in here, and cleaning it up on the sides as well. Starting to get there. Alex Matheson, Glasgow. That's a great result. So it is a Scottish chisel, and we'll do some research into that brand name, and then I think this is warranties steel. Excellent. Okay, so I'm running up through the grits. So that's 5,000 grit now. So I want it to look like surgical steel, and this corner still a little bit rounded, but that is looking lovely. Okay, we've run through all these different grits of sandpaper and now have a beautiful mirror finish on this side. So this is now flattened and polished, cleaned up the outside, and then just tidied up this primary bevel. So the primary bevel is at 25 degrees, and I did that with a honing guide, but it's not sharpened. This is not sharp yet. Let's talk about that very briefly. Everything in the workshop that you cut wood with is a form of a chisel or a tooth on a blade, and that's where two surfaces meet. So you've got the flat surface and the bevel, and that's what we've just cut to 25 degrees. Now, why is this surface so shiny? Why is that important? Well, if this was a little bit rough, if we extended this into 3 dimensions like so, so this is now our chisel sitting like this. If this was a little bit rough under here, then when you sharpen and add the next piece, clearly this is going to be lovely, but the underside isn't. So what you have to do is get this absolutely mirror finished like so, and then we're going to come in with what's called the secondary bevel, and we're going to take a small piece off here, and we're going to make this side absolutely mirror finished as well. So there'll be an extra bevel, a secondary bevel, which I'll use a honing guide for, and I'll show you how I do that. And then we polish it, strop it, and this will be super sharp. So that's the sharpening phase. The other thing that I've noticed is this tang hasn't been put in fully. So I'm actually going to take the handle off, clean it up, and be able to seat this. I could put a different handle on, but I quite like the feel of this, but I think it can be cleaned up. So that's the next stage, is change the handle or tidy the handle up and then sharpen it, and we'll just about be there. Okay, so it's now starting to look like a usable chisel. So got a bit of finish on the handle, I've tidied up the ferrule, I've put the tine in snugly and centered. We've got a flat, smooth back. Is it ready to use? No, because we've still got to sharpen it and get that secondary bevel on, and that's what we're going to do now, is the final sharpening to make this into a usable tool. There are many ways to sharpen a chisel. Some people do freehand, some people do whetstones, some people do oil stones, and I do diamond stones. I've got ultra coarse, coarse and fine, and then I've got a piece of 7,000 grit paper which I'm going to wet, so that's wet and dry, and I use a lapping fluid on the diamond stones. So the first thing, I don't do it freehand, I don't have the muscle memory, but I use a honing guide, this one from Veritas. So slide this over to say that it's 1 3/4. That's the width of the blade. Block that in there. Put a small bit of sandpaper in there just to tighten the grip. Make sure this is square here. Tighten up the locking bolts. There are different honing guides. You can get cheaper ones, easier ones, ones where you just slide up against a block of wood to get the angle. Now this is set to 25 degrees.
talked about before. Make sure that's nice and tight. Make sure it's square. And then remove this. So that is now set to 25 degrees, which is what this was here. Now what I'm going to do is flick this little adjustment here, which adds 5 more degrees on and makes us 25 degrees. I'm going to go straight to my fine stone. And I'm going to come back about 10 times. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And there is our secondary bevel, and if I run my finger underneath I can feel the burr that's come over. So looking at that, I just want a little bit more. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So sorry, that was my coarse stone. Feel the burr. Just move that and go to my fine stone. Now we're polishing that very thin strip. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. It's all the way across slightly side. Okay. And then on my wet and dry 7000 grit here. Then, if you're a leather strop, I'm not using a stropping compound on this surface. I'm now fairly confident that that is super sharp. Now we need to do some sort of test. So to test for sharpness, yes, I could shave a bit of arm hair, but I don't really fancy a trip to the emergency room. It does work. And so that's pretty sharp. Here's another test. It's just a piece of pine, but it's end grain, so see that forming that sort of dust, and then slight shavings. If I had to tidy this up, let's say it was inside a joint, and this would be the tool to do it, especially if it was a nice wide piece of wood. But to do that, this needs to be incredibly sharp, and you can also see why I've flattened the bottom so you can get a nice level reference so that you know that this is going to be square and true. That's a lovely chisel. So there we go. Scottish, Matheson, Glasgow, well older than I am, chisel that's been fully restored and will hopefully last longer than me. So there we go. So there we have it. That's an 1 3/4" chisel that's been fully refurbished. How does it compare? Well, here's a modern Stanley Fatmax that you might buy for £20 to £30, $20 to $30, maybe less. Maybe if you get it in a set it might work out cheaper. Here's a Veritas chisel, probably the most expensive you can buy right now. That cost me £100, which is $110, $120, partly due to lack of supply at the moment. But what's this worth to me? I spent several hours restoring it, as you saw, put a lot of effort in, some of it that's just cosmetic. But what it's worth to me is to be able to put in my tool rack over here next to my other vintage chisels that I have there, and then when I use it and work on things of that sort of age and older, just to me it feels better. It feels better in my hand, knowing the heritage, knowing the history of it, the fact that it's Scottish. So what price is that? I have no idea. If I had to put it on eBay, could I sell it for 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 pounds, dollars? I don't know, but I'm not going to. The next thing we're going to turn our attention to is the Stanley number 5.5 bench plane. So similar sort of process. We're going to strip it down, we're going to clean off the rust, we're going to sharpen the plane. We may have to do something with the base, I'm not sure yet, but we'll get this into working order as well. Sometimes these are cracked, but this is solid wood, which is nice. Looks in reasonable condition, just the finish has come off. These are in good condition, sometimes very rusty. There's not going to be a lot of work required on this one. I don't need to take that out, don't need to take the last one out, just need to clean up these surfaces, clean up the bed, give this a clean. The biggest area of work is going to be here. Great to see the wood shavings from the last time it was used, so this was a working tool. Now I'm looking at the blade. This is the business end here, and I think that's going to be fine. Just needs to be cleaned up. Okay, so I've sanded the base, but keeping it flat, and the sides, and I've given it a brush on the inside. There is a little bit of rust. Looks worse than it is. When rust forms, it expands 1,000 times over, so get that cleaned up and it'll be fine. Normally I wouldn't paint, but because there is so much of this, what I'm going to do is paint it with some black hammerite. May not be 100% original, but this is going to be a working tool rather than a museum restoration. And I did sand these edges off, but I'll paint them again. I'm not going to tape it off because I'm going to still sand the sides, so I can afford to have a little bit of carryover. But paint, a bit more sanding, and then the bed will be finished. So this is all coming on nicely. These are all cleaned up. It's very difficult to clean chrome like that, but everything else is clean. This is the blade, and this is the primary bevel, just like we talked about with the chisel. And then on the back, just cleaning it. It doesn't have to be quite as critical that it's flat like a chisel, but what you can see here is this line of dirt there. This line of dirt here, which tells me that there's been a back bevel put on this blade. So I'm going to try and grind it out a bit, see if I can flatten it, and then also bring this back. If not, I'll stick with the back bevel, but that's interesting that that's been done there, and let's see what we can do. Okay, we've now got a nice mirror finish on the back, and we've got our primary bevel, got the whole thing cleaned up, got that rust away, and we're now ready to put a secondary bevel on it and make it sharp. Okay, same as last time, we now flip this around to get the extra 5 degrees. We're going to go coarse, then fine, and then ultra fine. And unlike a chisel, we're actually going to get a slight curve on the blade. I'll show you what I mean. So we've got some honing fluid, about 10 strokes, even pressure. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And there's that secondary bevel just coming in. I think we'll do another 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Yep, that's good. Now I'm going to do 5, pushing down on the left hand side. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yep, that's just curved it around a bit. 5 on the other side. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Just even it up. 1 or 2 more here. 1, 2. Another 2. 1, 2. What you can see now is a sort of curve coming in, very slight. I can feel the burr underneath. I'm going to go to the fine stone and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yep. I'm just taking the burr off the back, which was already polished. Now we go over here. Now I find when it's this steep, I can't go backwards and forwards, I have to just go backwards. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Pressure on this side. 1, 2, 3, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Right, I can feel a burr. Now we can strop this. Let's clean up the wheel.
think that's going to be incredibly sharp. Okay, let's put it back together. So this one you want to be not so tight that it's really difficult to close the lever, but just so that there's enough pressure on it. So what I'm doing is sighting down the plane, retracting the blade completely by turning and then bringing it back out, and then looking to see if it comes out on the left or right, so slightly to the side. So then I use the adjustment lever, this one here, to bring it over to square, withdraw further and then back to get the tension back on. Right. I think we now have a working hand plane. Let's find out. Okay, I have a piece of pine. I have our Stanley number 5.5. Give that a good tighten. And then slowly extend the blade out. So it's quite aggressive. That's better. There we go. These lovely consistent shavings that you can see go the whole length. Beautiful. And you get this silky, smooth finish. That's a good plane. So this is a long piece of pitch pine. Look at that. That's what the 5.5 excels at, is nice long jointing boards. So this restored Stanley Bailey number 5.5 slots nicely into the stable here of working hand planes. So this is a Stanley number 7, number 6, number 5.5, number 5, number 4, no, number 4.5, number 4, a modern version, so not vintage, of a number 4, a couple of block planes, a modern low angle jack, confusingly called a Stanley number 62, and a shooting board hand plane. So this is going to be a working chisel, as this is going to be a working hand plane, and joins the others that I use in many projects, and completes the set. There's probably some others down in this area here that I'd be interested in, but the next thing from the mystery box is this 1910, 1918 number 4, which is the same as this but older. So you can see the iterations in design. This is modern, has quite a lot of other features, but these two are similar. So this is the next one to be restored, and we'll see how that turns out. So this we determined was well over 100 years old. I love how you can still see wood shavings from the last time it was used. And I suspect it's been a working hand plane all of its life. So lots of differences from the last one. There are two separate pieces. This is smaller. I like how that's stamped on the inside. So it's not chrome. I think that's a replacement, but maybe it's original. And this is the smaller adjuster, 1 inch diameter. That's not too bad, it's not too rusty at all. Gosh, a bit of sawdust. Because it's a smaller plane, just the one screw for the handle at the back. I wonder if this has been bent. Let's see. Oh, almost certainly. Okay. I'll have to be careful with that. I'll take the frog adjusting screw out this time as well. Okay, same as before, we'll clean the base, clean up the parts, sharpen the blade, see what we've got. So we can see that the blade is Stanley, the chip breaker is Record. So they do work together, but it makes you strongly believe that obviously these are not original, but they do fit and they're designed to go together, but it's difficult to date this part. There it is. 120-year-old hand plane restored. So here we have it. This is
tidied up, and let's have a look at what we've got. So we have our chisel, our 5.5, 4, and a marking gauge, and of course the box. So, pulling all this together to tell the story, it was found in Aberdeenshire, so in Scotland, and in a garage. The oldest plane is from 1910 to 1918. The number 5.5 is from 1948 to 1961. The chisel was made in Glasgow at Matheson Toolworks. It's had a replacement handle and possibly a replacement ferrule. The older chisels had some replacement parts in it. A marking gauge has the name J. Garvey stamped 3 times, and not with individual stamps, but a full stamp, so it suggests it's a company name. The box has got a lovely top of furniture grade veneer, but then has been finished quite simply pitch pine with box joints. It's had a handle on the front before, but then replaced much later with these pine French cleat style. How do I know it's much later? Because it's using Phillips screws in the side, whereas the rest of the construction is using flathead screws. So what does this make me think? There was a back bevel put into one of the blades, and the build of this is quite a sophisticated design that was patented in 1868, but the design has been copied. But it takes quite a bit of skill. So the cam locks and then moves, and so to be able to make that cross section and also inside and keep it completely level shows a little bit of skill. So what I'm left with thinking is that this is a working toolbox of somebody that went to site quite a lot. The other piece that told me that was this ferrule was painted silver and black, and the bottom of the box is painted silver, so somebody going to a work site being able to quickly identify their tools, so they're not other people's. So in a workshop with other people around, working tools used with precision, which then leads me on to an internet search for cabinet makers, furniture makers, the name of Garvey in Scotland. But meanwhile, from this, I've got a nice box, an interesting marking gauge, a working chisel, and 2 working hand planes. That's it for this week. I hope you enjoyed that, and we'll see you next time. Thanks very much.